Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Mosaic Podcast. I am so intrigued and excited and enamored. Sometimes you fall in love with something that you don't even know. And the minute I heard these people's stories, I felt in love. I fell in love with them, and they were kind enough to send me their book, and I read through it. Uh, if you do nothing else today, if this podcast does nothing more for you, then invite you to get a book, Be More Dog. Just go to the bookstore, go to Amazon, just buy the book, go to their website, buy their book. Um, there is something so transformative, something so magical about the story of Jim and Renee and their dog Jerry. We're going to dive into that a little bit now as we go. But what I want to just talk about is not only were they courageous in some of the decisions they made, not only did they leap into a world that they didn't know, but the love of their heart was just brought open by something that you would imagine most people would shut their heart. When we get it adverse news, when we get bad news, when we get situations where we think are painful, what do you as our listening audience do? Do you allow it to open you up? Do you allow it to break you into pieces, or do you allow it to break you into pieces, or do you allow it to rip your heart open? What we're going to look at is how one incident, which so many people could view as a tragedy, Jim and Renee maybe saw it as a tragedy too, but saw it as an opportunity to allow themselves to love more, to be more in the moment, to listen to the messages that they were being given. In the event that I don't want to make this into a soliloquy, let me give you a little bit of their bio and a little bit of the reason why they're here, and then we're going to just jump in. Jim Nelson and Rene Agredano. It's okay. We don't have to be perfect. Jim Nelson and Rene Agredano. Say it, Rene, for me.
Agredano.
Agredano. Jim Nelson and Rene Agredano are a married couple who live, work, and write from the road in their RV. Their nomadic life began in 2007 when they sold their home, business, and nearly everything they owned to travel with their terminally ill dog, Jerry. Given just a few months to live after his leg amputation, Jerry's bone cancer diagnosis at age 8 turned their lives upside down and around. But against all odds, Jerry defied the bleak prognosis. He enjoyed 2 unforgettable years hopping along on 3 legs, from coast to coast and back again. Wherever he went, his joyful nature inspired others to look beyond adversity and embrace the present moment. The trio founded Tripawds, spelled PAWDS.com, and we're going to put that in the show notes so you don't have to worry about it. The world's largest support community for 3-legged pets and their people. Later in 2014, they formed the nonprofit Tripawds Foundation to aid amputee pets. The couple continues managing Tripawds and chronicling their travels at liveworkdream.com. Again, all of that information will be, plus more, will be in the show notes. When I asked them their purpose, Renee said to me, "It's to help underserved people and animals feel heard, supported, and valued." And Jim said to me, I believe I am here to help people be more dog, especially in times of distress or challenge. Jerry taught us about resilience, acceptance, perseverance, loving kindness, awareness, gratitude. And I'm just paying that forward. Instead of just helping people smile, as I originally answer, I do the work I do to help pet parents cope with difficult situations by following their dog's lead. Jim and Rene, it's with great admiration and big honor I welcome you to the Mosaic Podcast. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
An honor and a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I have a love feast with you guys for many reasons. One is because I was about to go on the road and become a digital nomad and I put a line in the sand May 1st, and then COVID-19 came, and as the Jews have a great saying, they say man plans and God laughs. And I bet she's having a good laugh on my behest right now, but it's delayed, it's not canceled. And the other is because I used to have a beautiful golden retriever by the name of Buddha.
Oh.
And Buddha was never amputated, but the Buddha developed cancer in his body. And I would travel in those days quite a bit, and so I had people that he loved to stay with him. They were like other family members. But there came a time at a certain point where I would go away on a trip, and they would come and watch him, and they would say, "Danny, you have to come back. He's not going to make it past this evening." And I would race back, and he would be just all bubbly and bouncy, and he was all full of life. And I said, "What the heck are you talking about?" And they said, "Danny, he's not this way when you're not here." And what I realized over the course of several trips, which I made day trips rather than longer trips, he was living for me. He didn't want to die because when I was around, he got life again, and he wanted to be there for me. And finally, I could bear his pain no longer because he was just trying so hard that we ended up having to put him down. The day after, and I had to put him down because I was about to go give a big talk at a convention. Well, the talk that I had prepared was not at all the talk that I gave. The talk that I gave was Wag More, Bark Less. And that was all about, and so I was one step away from creating the mission that you created, which is Be More Dog, around the same period of time. But I didn't have the love of my heart to dedicate my love to it like you did. Tell me, what in the world possessed you, pivot point, that would allow you to sell your home, sell almost everything you have, and pop into an RV, which, to my knowledge, you were not that familiar with.
Correct.
And go out on the road with a three-legged animal and think that that was what you were supposed to do with your life. How in the world did that happen?
Well, what you said is beautiful and rings true, because I believe the lifestyle we ended up living helped prolong Jerry's prognosis and quality of life. But how did all that begin, Rene?
It just
it was her idea.
It was my idea. It just seemed like the right thing to do. We had been living this life that was pretty common to everybody else. You know, we were working a 10 to 10 grind. I mean, we were working a lot of hours trying to get our business off the ground throughout Jerry's entire life. And when he got sick, I was just struck by the fact that he would no longer be our chief fun officer anymore. I just couldn't believe that he was going to die as a dog who spent most of his life in our office. And I just felt awful thinking about that. It just didn't sit right with me. So for a while, we had talked about making some kind of life transition. We had been doing what we were doing for 10 years, and it just, our passion wasn't there anymore. But, you know, I looked at Jerry and I thought, we need to give you what you want. You've given us what we need. Let's give you what you need. And he loved being outdoors. He loved meeting people, and he never got to do a whole lot of that being an office dog with us.
Right.
And I realized we weren't doing that either. We weren't doing what we really enjoyed. And I often saw friends of ours who were traveling and taking these incredible trips. And I knew that our hearts were out there somewhere, and we had to go find it. Had to go find what Jerry was trying to teach us. So I presented the idea to Jim one day, sat him down and said, you know, I've been thinking that we need to take a road trip. And he looked at me like I was what are you talking about? And I said, what would be the number one thing that we could give Jerry before he died? And I thought it would be an open-ended trip, just doing what he loved the most. It sounds completely nuts. And he kind of took it in for a few minutes and said, all right, tell me more. Let's talk about this. And I couldn't believe it. That was, he agreed with me so quickly. And I think he knew all along that was something we had to do.
So if you can, and Jerry chime, I'm sorry, not Jerry. Look, I'm already feeling Jerry right here, right? Jim, chime in also if you feel to. If you can dive down into that moment a little bit more, because yes, that story, first of all, it's a crazy story, and it's where most people probably stop. But like what, I'm about pivot points in people's lives where things seem completely irrational, completely, it would 30 minutes ago it would be something they would have never done before. And 30 minutes later is probably something they never thought they would ever do. What exactly, if you can, what captured that moment that made you say, I get it, we're thinking of changing our life, but you were probably thinking of changing your life for 6 months or a year before that. What happened in that moment? Because I bet there are a lot of people right now listening that are thinking, you know what, my life isn't all like I might be making some money and I might be doing okay, but this isn't the life I always dreamed about having. What can you reflect back to people that you can say, if you see this, have the courage to jump?
In hindsight, Jerry's diagnosis and amputation was a gift. It was actually a door opening for us, especially for me. We had run the business for 10 years. We'd grown a pretty large operation, lots of overhead, and it was just the two of us. It was time to grow and expand, which we were seriously considering. If I hire sales help, I need production help. If I hired production help, I'd need sales help. And no one could do the job as well as me. I knew training people, it was very frustrating time. And out of the blue, this happened. And it was, in retrospect, it was a gift. At the time, I was shocked and overwhelmed. We didn't even know dogs got cancer at the time. But my gift to others would be, you don't have to wait until your dog gets cancer or your kid gets hit by a bus or a worldwide pandemic or riots in the streets to wake up and see what's going on inside. And that's what this was. It was really an eye opener. And honestly, it didn't take me long to say, okay. I mean,
Yeah.
Rene said, let's do this crazy, wild thing. And I just thought once, twice, okay, and we'll make it work somehow, because I was burnt out. I was done, but I refused to tell myself that because I was in the previous life, I was a marketing communications manager in Silicon Valley. And then I went off to start my own firm and I was making a go of it and I was successful. Who's one to throw all that away and buy an RV and go stay in a van down by the river? Well, that turned out to be what we do and what we love doing. And it was just kind of, and just like as, is it Leonard Cohen, I think, says there's a crack where the light comes in.
Yeah.
And once you see that light, you can then open that to show your way to the lightness. We were doing pretty well, but deep down, I was doing it for other people. And I was burnt out on that. I wanted to do something for ourselves and start living more fulfilled for our own purpose, which we had no idea what that would be. So Rene planned and budgeted for a year off. We were taking a sabbatical. This was supposed to be a year. Jerry was supposed to live a few more months. They gave him 6 months to a year. At the 6-month point is when we hit the road. And all along, I made him a promise. I said, hang in there, buddy. Just every night I'd stroke him and hang in there, buddy. We're going to take you on an amazing road trip. It's going to be a great gift. And he hung in there. And then, like I was saying, I think that daily routine, which was no routine, but always moving around, meeting new people, going coast to coast, and just having these daily adventures helped him live the life he wanted to live. And we started to see that that was possible for ourselves.
Wow. So Did you, at the moment that Renee said that to you, did you sell everything, or did you say, well, we're going to take a year and then we'll come back? And I think everybody in the audience can get, we were burnt out, we needed a little bit of a break. But where did you get the courage to sell everything that you had, buy an RV, and just create an entirely nomadic life? Because in the days that you were doing it, there weren't that many people doing it.
Correct.
I mean,
Right.
maybe
And
retired people were doing it, but not
Right.
people that were still young and in their prime.
Exactly. And again, it comes back to Renee because she's the planner, and we read books and we budgeted for a year off. And the goal was to take this road trip and find out what we would do next. Well,
Yeah.
what are we going to do when we grow up? Let's go investigate places. And we had checklists of, perfect communities, and we'd either start a new business or, we would eventually go relocate.
It felt like a more responsible way to do something like this. I think I had to justify it in my head that this was not entirely nuts. So yeah, we did have a master plan in place, but as far as getting rid of things, it was easier than I thought. It all along, having all of the possessions that we had and the big house and the mortgage and all that stuff, it just never felt right. It never felt like it was us. And
Never felt right, or didn't feel right now at that point in time.
Back then.
Even back then, we were wearing these clothes that just didn't feel like they fit right. I mean,
Right.
we looked okay in them, but it just, in my heart, I would just have this envy, or I don't know, envy is not the right word, but I would just look at people who were living freer than we were and just want that. And we kept meeting people. This is the weird part. We kept meeting people who had this kind of life. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, like, we're not in the right place. And I think this situation is telling us something. So downsizing, getting rid of these things actually felt good. And the first time we did it was to hit the road with Jerry, and we didn't get rid of nearly enough things. We did keep a small storage unit, which we thought was small at the time. And we got rid of as many things as we felt like we needed to in order to travel and fit this new life into our world later on. But
at the time, we thought we were going to relocate, furnish
Totally.
a new home wherever we land.
Totally.
This thing would be this,
we kept some basics. We kept a bed.
enough
we
to
kept
furnish a house.
Set of dishes, that kind of thing. But yeah,
Far too much.
We 2 years later, we went back and went, what were we thinking? Let's get rid of more.
Wow.
And we eventually got rid of everything that wouldn't fit into a 5x7 storage unit.
Wow.
So now that's what we have, and it's just sentimental things that have no price tag on them.
So have there been moments when you've been in your RV where you think, oh my God, what did we do? Like, I wish we still had that stuff, because we could, like, we found a place where we would like to live, and we could locate, and we could bring the past back to us where we are? Or did you just, once you got rid of it, you just were happy?
So I think, no, I don't think that at all anymore, because we tried it.
Anymore.
We did eventually purchase a small cabin and got all our stuff out of storage and put it in this wonderful little house deep in the woods, beautiful piece of property, and we were never there. It was up in the mountains, so it was definitely a summer destination.
Right.
And one summer we weren't even there at all. But we were paying HOA fees and insurance on this beautiful piece of property. But for me, there was just a house in the way. If I could go there and park, great. But we had this house and still too much stuff. So we eventually got rid of that too. And since then, I haven't felt that way, that need to be that rooted ever again.
Once we realized that we couldn't remember most of the things that we were storing, I knew that we didn't need those things in our life anymore.
It's just stuff.
Yeah, it's just, but you're at the cutting edge of a couple trends that really became big, which is, one was nomadic people working as nomads in a world of their own creation, and the other was the minimalists movement that really has sprung up over the course of time, which is, we really don't need all the things that we think we need. Um, so there's a part of my story that I can really relate to you on, because after my parents passed away, I moved in with an aunt and uncle in a different part of the country that I really didn't know that well. But my uncle had become a household name. And it was in the days, this was 50 years ago, and it was in the days where men didn't give their businesses over to their women, to their daughters. He had 3 daughters. So when I came, he said, interesting. He said, I want you to know I'm going to be watching you for the next month. And I want to just see if you have the capability, because I have this huge business, and eventually I'm going to want to get out of it. It's $1 billion company. And eventually I'm going to want to get out. So I'm going to watch you to see if over the course of time I can start you from pushing a broom. And with my mentoring over a course of 10, 15 years, you can end up in my chair and I can retire. So I said, oh my God, what a kind gesture. And about a month later, he came up and said, I see something in you that I think I'd like to try. So I want to bring you into the office, and I want you to start sweeping up the office, and I want to see how you do. And we will slowly raise you up. And I said, that's so beautiful, but I'm 15 years old. I don't know. Let me take a year. You're like brilliant. And it took you a month to watch me. I'm just a simple little kid. I'm 15 years old. I'm naive. I've been sheltered my whole life. Suddenly I'm in this whole nother world where I went from a lower middle class family to an elite family in the world. I want to watch you and see if the life that you want to give me is the life that I want. I'd like a year to do that. And he said, Danny, do you know that 99.99999% of the people in the world would have just said, where's the broom? And started sweeping. And I said, it's just our rotten luck that I'm that 0.00000.1. But I can't do that, because as beautiful as the offer is, I have no idea what it means. And over the course of a year, we sat down and had a lunch like he said he was going to do. And I asked him a few questions. And from those questions, we realized this was not my job. This was not my place to go. But I understand walking away from something that seems incredibly right, because it just isn't right for you anymore, or it isn't right for you at all. And yet I hear people thinking, had you ever been in a space that was like 7 feet by 10 feet or 15 feet?
You're looking at it.
Right. And shared that space together over the course of 13 years. Had you ever even thought how you guys would interact with each other? Would you kill each other? Would you yell at each other? What do you do when one gets mad and just needs space? What do you do? How do you deal with that space confine? Like in summer, I understand you go for a walk in you'd say, I'll see you in an hour or two. I'm just going to take a walk in the park. In winter, when it's snowing and cold and everything's going on, what do you do then? So how do you deal with those places where you are just at each other's throats? Maybe not literally, but and you are stuck in the same place.
That never happens.
Oh.
No. It all goes back to Jerry.
It does.
Jerry was such a sensitive soul that whenever we would raise our voices, we'd be in the office, we'd be getting upset about something, and he would absorb that energy, and just, you could see it. You could see him change. He would start to hunch down a little, and he'd look really sad and go sit under the other person's desk, whoever wasn't mad at the time. So getting upset around Jerry was like, let's not do this. This is really sad. He wasn't an abused dog before we got him, but we're like, something in him is just not looking right when we would be upset. So we had a lot of good practice back in the day. And then when we got into the RV, he was our ground. He was the whole reason we tried really hard to deal with our emotions so that they wouldn't spiral out of control and affect him, because it was bad for his health anyways. At that point, he was so sick. So yeah, I think Jerry led us in that direction. And through the years, we've had a lot of practice trying to cope with stress and unexpected things that happen along the way. This lifestyle throws curves at you every chance it gets, practically. Even today, I mean, our power went out and we're like, what? I mean, when does that happen in your house unless there's a storm or something? So we've had a lot of practice at it over the last 13 years.
But even before then, I mean, we've been married 25 now. Yeah.
Three. We've been together 25.
Been together 25 years, married 23. And we've always worked from home together, and we're pretty much joined at the hip. So putting that all on wheels just kind of put us in a smaller space. But that first year or so on the road, again, was kind of supposed to be our vacation and our sabbatical until we find that perfect place where we were going to go. And our travels led us to believe that, it's hard to pick. There's no, people say, oh, what was your favorite place? And I could list a dozen very easily right off the top. So we couldn't really decide on where to quote unquote settle down. And we ended up just settling into our new routine. And we were being led by, honestly, I believe, this three-legged spirit guide, this Zen master, who was just so keen on those things you introduced us with, the resilience, the awareness, the acceptance, that we just kind of adapted those into our daily lives.
I always used to joke that if we didn't get along, one of us would have to go get a real job to bring in some money. Right. So that was one thing that kept us from killing each other when the going got tough. But but now it's like, if we want to keep enjoying what we love most about this lifestyle, we have no choice. We have to make it work. I love our relationship as much as I love this lifestyle, and it works.
And you can see it; it's obvious. My wife passed away 18 years ago of a very bad cancer, but I remarried about literally 5 years ago because we just celebrated our anniversary. And I don't think we've ever had a fight in 5 years, not because we don't talk about things, just because we love each other too much to have that happen. And we have lots of adversity around us and lots of things going on, but it just doesn't affect. We have each other, which makes it work. So I love that about you guys, and I love that you would call that to heart. Have you ever wondered if the routine you're in is becoming just another routine you're in, and that it's becoming comfortable for you? And does it still challenge you? Like when you first did it, it was a step outside of your comfort zone. Has this step outside of your comfort zone become the new comfort zone?
Not necessarily. I mean, I can see that too a bit when we stay stationary for a long period, thanks to this pandemic is an example. We don't want to be moving around a lot. So we're going on 2 months in one location, and that becomes kind of a routine. But again, that's a blessing because we have lots of projects where we need to hunker down and get stuff done. But it was those, the trips around the country and visiting all the new locations that kept us on our toes all the time. And especially a trip to Alaska that was just fraught with excitement. People would have given up early in that journey based on some of the things we went through, but we persevered because we knew how to accept things as they are and be able to adapt to the situation.
I think that the pandemic really shook us up, and for a minute made me question, is this lifestyle, does it make sense? Because we literally had nowhere to go that we knew was going to be safe. A lot of RV parks were shutting down. It makes sense to have water, sewer, and electric when a pandemic happens. But we kept hearing about RV parks shutting down, and we just, wow, where are we going to go? This is crazy. People in houses don't have to make these decisions. And we're very fortunate in that some friends of ours offered up their place, their property, which we're on now. But that was kind of a wake-up call that made me wonder, is this really the right thing? And the answer is yes. We're still happy, and we still get tested all the time on this.
Not for COVID.
No, no, for this life. We get challenged by the lifestyle. Yeah. We get challenged by the lifestyle.
On a daily basis, there's challenges.
I love that. I love that more than I hate it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're just going to keep doing what we love.
I put it in a frame of reference to what you were saying earlier about, you know, our previous life. And I viewed that kind of as doing penance. I was kind of, you know, going through the motions. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to either get that career going or grow my business and, you know, eventually at some point in the distant retire, and then we can go hike or get an RV or do that thing. And I noticed that a lot of people doing that at the time were retired and weren't enjoying it as much as I possibly could while I was younger. So it kept me going in this new lifestyle.
So what scares you the most about the
Mm.
lifestyle you're living?
That's a tough one.
The first thing that comes to mind is
First of all, I love the way you look at each other after I ask a question.
that's
Like,
us. We're joined.
Who's gonna do this one?
The first thing that come to mind is not, you know, necessarily things that scare me, but how we deal with those fears. And there's a book by, actually, I won't butcher his name, called Fear Vana, and it's about fear is a good thing and we need to embrace it and get through it. And we really only become better if we embrace those fears, not necessarily overcome them, but welcome them and learn from them. So what scares me most is the unknown. And you know, we've seen what's before us, but there's things, it'll never surprise me, especially when it comes down to this pandemic business. I mean, nothing will surprise me anymore, especially with, you know, leadership and what's going on with the country. So the unknown is a bit fearful, but I'm ready for it. I welcome it.
I think the one thing that scares me about it, and about the only thing I can think of, is inclement weather. So tornadoes, hurricanes, things like that. You know, RVs don't exactly stand up to Mother Nature a lot of the time. And that is about the only time when I have just been completely terrified. Like, wow, are we going to end up flipped over somewhere in a ditch?
We've seen them.
Yeah, we've seen them.
Been through it.
We always get through it, and we just go on. I used to be afraid that we made a serious mistake, and I used to think, man, one day when we're old and don't have a house like everybody else, what are we going to be like? What's our old age going to be like? Then I met other people like us who had been living like this for almost their entire adult lives. They were doing fine. They made some great choices that we learned from, and now I just want to emulate them and follow in their footsteps. And we have no plans to stop until somebody tells us we can't drive anymore. So.
But one other fear that keeps us going is the financial aspects. I mean, in my previous default life, I was on that Silicon Valley path to have the I was at the six-figure career and you know, 401ks and those kind of things. And to have that all on our own shoulders now, we're making a go of it. But I wonder, you know, would it be easier if we had the benefits and the job and the so-called security? I know from experience that security is false. We've had major clients just close their doors and, you know, that all goes away.
So, first of all, thank you for being honest. What did you think would be different than it is? Like what's been the biggest surprise that you've noticed from, like, you seem like you're as a couple, you're strong together. As a purpose, you knew what your purpose was. You went out on the road. What completely changed in the way you saw the world once you were doing it than the way you had seen it before you did it?
It's not as scary a place as people think. People, on the vast majority of them, they're good-hearted people, and there is a lot of good in this world. And all we tend to see, thanks to, you know, society shoving it down our throat through the news stream, is the ugliness.
Yeah.
But we've been off the main roads and we've encountered strangers where in our previous life we would have, crossed the road to not encounter these folks. But again, Jerry kind of opened that door for us to, welcome people into our hearts and trust them, until we had reason to believe otherwise.
So let me roll that back a little, because I get that Jerry taught you a lot, and his temperament was such that he lived that life that you emulated. But sometimes I wonder if you downplay your own ability and your own sense of purpose and your own discovery within yourself. Because it's so easy to say Jerry taught us, because I know that situation. Um, at a certain point, wouldn't Jerry want you to stop saying that and just say we sort of have learned how to teach ourselves how to do this by doing what he did?
He would, and that's, at the core of all his lessons. And in all honesty, I get what you're saying, and it's true. I've always been shy and bashful, and I've never been that guy. I'm not the one who's going to make all the money. I'm not the one who's going to run the race first, and I've my self-esteem has not always been one to say I'm that guy, until we met one character in our travels who kind of opened our eyes to that and said, repeat after me. I am awesome. I am awesome. All the time. All the time. And that has become a new mantra, and it's kind of pumped me up a bit to be able to say, yeah, I am awesome. This is my doing. We're still on the road 13 years managing, 1,500 three-legged dog and cat blogs for people who need it because of what we've done. But, I'm always the man behind the curtain. I'm the wizard who likes to get it done without being in the spotlight there.
And I'm much the same way. That's why I became a writer.
Yeah.
I like to be behind the scenes. I like to know that people are reading what I've written, but I don't want to watch them reading it, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense until a certain point. And so, like, I kept getting, pardon me, because I have this little guy that lives in my head. And, before we were in the green room, you said, I wonder where this is going to go. And maybe this is where it's going. Okay. Because there's something that I feel as I'm speaking to you, that I have this weird ability to hear people's souls. And I have this weird ability to go beyond the stories that they consistently say to everybody else, where people just stop there. Like, I have a feeling, whether I'm right or wrong, take this and throw it in the trash if it doesn't make sense. But I have a feeling that your work is not only with three-legged dogs or cats anymore. I have a feeling your work is with four-leggeds and two-leggeds as well. And I believe that um, there is something that has happened to you and maybe this is the comfort zone shift, that is just like you had the comfort to leave your comfort zone then. There are things that you've seen on this road that nobody knows, that nobody could ever know without going and doing what you're doing. There are incidences of kindness that you've seen in a world where everybody else sees adversity, and there's incidents of adversity that have scared the hell out of you. I'm sure there have been that you don't speak of as much, but I'm sure they're there. And for people to have somebody to help guide them through these times of adversity. We're in a time where, like, who would have ever thought that the world would get to a place, or America would get to a place, where a global pandemic would become the second story reported on the news, because the streets are chaotic with riots going on and people and looting and protesters being accused of what looters and agitators are doing. Not the protesters are remaining peaceful, but the agitators and the looters are trying to put a bad name on the protesters. And the police are being given a bad name for just a few police that are really not good policemen. It's not, I mean, when we get in trouble, we call the police. We don't call our minister or our doctors. We call the police. And most of them, in most cases, are fabulous. They really help us. And so the world needs to somehow see Jerry bigger than the world that I believe you're showing. And you're showing a big world. You're helping a lot of people. But I'm going to invite you, I'm just going to lob this over the net. because of how close I feel to you from some of the conversations we've had about the mosaic and about the things that are going on. The world you see is a world that needs to be broadcast to the world at large. And it doesn't only happen in three-leggeds. I think there are a lot
That
of
is that. I'm that's sorry to interrupt. That is an honor. I am.
And it's beautiful.
I'm touched that you feel that about us. I'll own it. I'll take it. Thank you.
Good.
And what the way I see it is that, the Be More Dog, the tripods, that's our battle cry. That's our flag that we're waving. All of us have our purpose and our mission in life, and it goes beyond what we focus on, like you're saying. But I think to be out there, you have to stand out from others somehow. And a boss always told me, there's always room for number two. But once it gets a real crowded environment, your message gets diluted. And over 13 years, digital nomads is now a thing.
Yeah.
We're not going to wave that flag anymore. There's plenty of other blogs and YouTubers who are doing it on a daily basis much better. But what we've done with Tripawds is our way to wave our flag and say, look at us, look what we're doing. We're realizing that marketing a book is harder than writing a book that took 10 years to write.
Way harder.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my recent pitch campaigns has been even pre-pandemic, but up into this is like, now more than ever, people need to hear stories about people that are doing good things.
Yeah.
And that has rung true and landed me some press coverage about what our efforts that have on shows that have nothing to do with veterinary surgery.
Yeah. I mean, and this comes from a man who Oprah, talking to Gail, her best friend, said, told your story or said, like, what about these guys doing that? So you have gotten some acclaim. But I think, and I'm just an old fat guy sitting in a house in California, not taking on the challenges that you're taking on of traveling around the world yet. Okay. And I think your brand of Tripawds is an amazing brand. But I think your brand of Be More Dog is a brand that two-leggeds could hear way better than four-leggeds. And I think that if I were to look at you, if I were working with you as clients, what I would invite you to do is really what happened to me. And I saw it. It's funny because I started out our conversation this way on the podcast of when my dog passed away and I went to give a talk. The talk that I gave wasn't the talk that I was going to give. It was the talk about what my dog did, which was wag more, bark less. Like the world just needs a loving presence. It doesn't need somebody barking at it anymore. Like in your businesses, if you would, why bark when you can love? And just wag more and bark less. Well, Be More Dog is the way that you stand out. Who is being more dog? I mean, that's the message to humanity that you're bringing. And they tell the not so funny joke, I guess, but it's a joke that says, if you want to know how much your wife loves you and your dog loves you, lock both of them in the trunk of your car for half an hour and come back and see how your wife responds and how the dog responds. Right? Right. And just anybody, it could be your husband. It's just like dogs are just so loving and loyal and they're just looking to be there for you. That's what our world needs. We need to find those places in ourselves where we just love each other no matter what, where we find the commonality, where we find the place where we are united and our love unites us. Anyway, I didn't mean to change your whole life mission. You're doing pretty good without me.
No, thank you
I
so
think,
much. And it rings so true because I think a lot of that in there has to do with the reason this book took 10 years to write.
Yeah.
I mean, our first draft was a tome. It was, 300,000 words. It was crazy. No one wanted to hear all those little stories. But beyond that, it took us a while to get down to, what are we trying to tell people? You don't need to tell people every single story about, what Jerry was doing and how amazing he was on three legs and say it over and over and over again. But the gist of it was that, we can learn to adapt and take these lessons on as we need to.
I think one of the things that is making me a little crazy about staying still for so long, 2 months in one spot with full hookups for us is a long time. And with no way to know what next week or next month is going to bring, it's really hard for me to sit here and be okay with this, because being out there in the world only confirms to me and to Jim, I'm sure, that people are good. People are really kind. And if you just turn off the television and get out there and talk to people with a mask on, you'll learn that not everybody is out to get one another. Not everybody wants what you've got and is after you, or it's just not as terrifying as what you see in the media. And so I'm having a hard time lately, just knowing that we may not be able to reinforce that message within us by getting out. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I do think that our message goes beyond the dog message. It's just let's be kind to one another. Let's understand that we can have our differences and be okay with that.
So we haven't had a television for more than 13 years, and I'm very grateful for that, because there are bad apples out there, but they don't have to spoil the whole damn bunch.
Right,
I mean,
right. And we learned that as kids growing up, right? There's always going to be a bad apple in the barrel.
you
But
weed them out.
I wrote a Facebook post the other day, and I just was enamored by this tree that I had seen, and it was a pear tree, and it was full of thousands and thousands of pears. And I thought, life is just like that tree. Like I'll reach up and I'll take a pear from that tree, but I might get not an unripe pear, or I might get a sour pear, and my natural inclination is to think that every other pear on the tree tastes the way this pear tastes. But I would never know that until I put this pear down and took another pear, and there might be just one as sweet and luscious as could possibly be. And life is just exactly that way. We pick something out of the sky, and we say, this is what I believe. And we hold on to it because we think every other belief will lead me to the same place, but it doesn't. And so, like, this is the place that I was hoping we would get to together. This is the place that you said, I wonder where we're going to go to today. Because the beauty of the message that I found when I was reading your book was the adversity of having a dog with an amputated leg and cancer. And of course, that's the work that you set up. That branch of what you've done is helping people get through those adversities. But the other side of it is the wonderment of what happened when you set out to bring joy to that situation. And to me, honestly, that's the place the world needs you to be in right now. Because all of us, whether we have cancer or a limb gone or loss of job or race relations, all of it is our adversity. And what do we do with that adversity? And I loved when I asked you in that small space, when you're ready to rip each other's heads off, you just said, no, that's not what we do. I mean, it's just because our Jerry taught us that. Well, that message is where the world needs to go. Mm-hmm. And we think as soon as we solve race relations, we're going to be okay. But guess what? Right on the horizon, I spoke to someone yesterday on the podcast that I'm about to put out in the next few days that's talking about the future, and it's talking about robotics in the future, and how robotics are going to take over all the jobs, and we're going to have medical questions where my daughter's developmentally delayed, and they're working on a Neuralink that they can put into the insert into the side of the head that will bypass all the misconnections in a paraplegic or a developmentally delayed kid or a blind person, and allow blind people to see, paraplegics to have a normal life, developmentally delayed people who can't talk to speak, because they'll connect for the first time connections that were never connected. And what will that do ethically in a world that says, hold it, the brain is our front, we can't mess with the brain, we can't put alien intelligence into the brain. I mean, we're about to enter a whole new frontier of where we challenge each other and fight each other. And 30 years ago, I would have said, are you kidding? I would never have that happen. I have a developmentally delayed daughter who can't speak and has all sorts of problems going on. And if a Neuralink could give her a normal life, screw what I thought before. So, like, what are those things that are happening along your journey that change the way you believe, that you would have said, I would have never believed that before, but now I do? What would one of those things be besides the fact that people are kinder than you thought? Because I don't think that's really what I don't think you ever believed they weren't.
I used to, well, I grew up in a family that had guns, and here's a touchy topic. I was taught how to use a gun, and I had always owned one as an adult. And when we hit the road, we took it with us, and it just, I never. The longer we traveled, the less it sat well with me that we had this thing in our possession, and we finally together said, why do we even have this? Could we even use it? I don't know. I still don't know, but we don't carry it anymore. We don't carry anything like that. And bear spray is the worst thing we have now.
Mm.
And I feel really good about that. And I never would have thought that I could see the world in that light, that it is not so scary that I feel like I need to be armed wherever we travel. So that's really changed about me.
Beautiful. And Jim?
Well, it's true. I don't feel unsafe anymore in any particular locations. I mean, I've spent the night in parking lots and made waffles in the morning when, you know, other people are living in their cars, and I'm there by choice, and they're there because they have to. So it's opened my eyes to see, you know, look upon myself and be grateful, and really see gratitude in everything, rather than, you know, immediately see the negativity and, you know, the adversity of the situation, but instead reframe it and be grateful for it. Another instance comes to mind. You know, we've had flat tires on the side of a busy highway, and instead of fighting at each other and being angry, we implemented what we've learned to do with laughter yoga. So we broke out in laughter, and within minutes we were coping with this situation, and it actually ended up being hours, but we got through it. And it all comes down to a matter of choice. And I think it was Viktor Frankl who said, between action and reaction, there's a space. And within that space, we have our choice to determine how we wish to react to it. And I'll go back to Jerry teaching me those lessons, but you've opened my eyes to realize that, you know, those lessons were always there. He was just an example. Yeah. And by accepting and being aware of the situation and the ramifications of it, that's how we adapt our response. And I don't think enough people are doing that right now. You know, the protests that turn ugly, whether they're, you know, just something switch flips, whether, you know, what makes the cop pull the trigger, we just need to take a breath and, you know, open up our eyes to what the ramifications are of our actions.
Yeah. I could talk to you guys forever, and I hope we will continue to talk. I hope this is just the beginning of a beautiful relationship that can continue to flourish. But I want to be respectful of your time and also the time of people that come. I always ask this question to end every podcast. So if you've heard some of them, you will know what that question might be. And that is, when you look out the window, most of the times it's a window from the living room of your house, but it's from the living room of your house. When you look out your window at the world you see, is this the world you always dreamed of giving over to the future generations?
Personally, honestly, I've always been kind of a fatalist, and in my previous lives, until I became more quote unquote enlightened, I see the world as happening and I'm not surprised. But over the past few years, and, you know, meeting more and more people personally, the world we're leaving does not surprise me. But the world that Rene and I are leaving is better than I could ever have dreamed. Because since I was always a fatalist, I never thought that I could make a difference. Mm-hmm. But I know that the smallest things that I can do to touch one person out there and help them through a difficult time, and if they tell two friends, or if I laugh through a situation and someone else learns how to do that same thing, then yes, we have it within us to make this world a better place than we could ever have dreamed.
I am hopeful. I I think that this world is full of a lot of enlightenment right now, and it's out there. We just have to bring more of it out. And I am hopeful. The world as it is now, no, it's not the world that I thought we would leave our kids, but I'm hopeful.
So, and both of you sort of said the same thing, which is that left unchecked, it's not the world, but the world that you're living in, the world that you see possibilities for. Yes, it would be. You're hopeful. So, what would be one thing, and it comes from a different perspective than most people would give, because you have 13 years on the road of seeing people and interacting with people that most people wouldn't get a chance to interact with. What would be one thing each of you would say that people could start doing right now that could lean the world from the world that we don't really want to give over to our kids and future generations to the world of where our hopes are for the world to become?
Take a walk in your neighborhood and say hello to people. Just make eye contact and say hi and see what happens.
Beautiful.
To think before you speak or act. Long ago, my first tattoo was Rodin's Thinker, and he's on my arm to remind me to think before I act, because I think too many impulse negative reactions based on what society is feeding us is what's getting us into this trouble mess going on in most of the world. But if we look within and realize that our actions can make a difference, it's just a matter of taking a breath and making that choice.
Fabulous. If people want to, and I'm sure they will, if people want to get in contact with you, if they want to invite you to where they are, if they want to find out how what you're doing more and as you develop into different ways, how's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Why don't you give your website, and if that's not the best way, another web place?
Sure, thank you. First and foremost, our purpose and the reason we do what we do is Tripawds, and that's spelled with a paw. So at Tripawds on any social media platform, or tripawds.com, or tripawds.org for our financial aid for veterinary amputation. That's why we do what we do. And if you ever encounter anyone with a three-legged dog, let them know and send them that way. But what you were getting at about the whole reasoning behind that in the book that took 10 years and the lessons Jerry taught us that were always within us, that's bemoredog.net. It's available wherever, your local bookstore. Hopefully you can go there. It's available anywhere, but bemoredog.net is where we're showing video excerpts from the book and then videos from that time period, so it can get kind of exciting. And for the whole nomadic adventure travels, that's Live Work Dream, at Live Work Dream or liveworkdream.com. So thank you so much for letting us share all that.
Yeah, thank you.
And that will all be in the show notes, highlighted in the same way they just highlighted here for you here. I want to thank you so much, not only for coming on the podcast, but for also being the people that you are, and for having the example of another way to live life that most people don't even consider. And I want to just take a moment I also want to thank the people who have come and listened to the podcast over and over again. And I so honor and respect you for giving us of your time. And I just want to summarize for 1 minute what I felt. I don't know Jim and Rene very well. I mean, I really just met them along with you. I've had one or two conversations. They were kind enough to buy the mosaic and read it and send me, like this was such a beautiful testimony of it around how Jerry for them was a lot of the characters in the book. But I felt a closeness to them right from the start. And it isn't because they're necessarily the type of people that I would necessarily be close to. I'm not saying they are or they're not. But there's just something underneath the surface of who we are as people that connects us so much deeper than anything else we know. And I was so honored to have them come on the show, because the show is all about showing different perspectives. Because when we continue to see the world the way we see the world, we're going to continue to live in a world that's the way we see it. But the minute we have the courage to change perspective, I think Wayne Dyer said it somewhat in these words, that when you change the way you look at the world you look at changes. Have the courage to change the way you look at the world, especially if it's not the way you want it to be. A change of perspective literally will change everything about your life. So, what are you doing now that is safe and comfortable in your life, but that it's not bringing you happiness? What are you doing now that if you just did 1 degree different could impact the world in a whole nother way? How are you living in a stationary home with stationary thoughts when you could be more mobile than you believe, whether that's your home or your thought process? Because the way we do anything is the way we do everything. Do you have the courage, like Rene and Jim had, to take a terrible situation, cancer in their dog, the amputation of his leg, and think not about themselves, but think about their dog? How do we believe he would like to spend the last years of his life, or last months of his life, or last weeks of his life? Who are you thinking about today? Dog, human, cat, business, I don't care who, person you don't even know. That what could you do today that would actually give honor and glory and make another person's life happier for just a few moments? What adversity are you looking right in the face that is crumbling you, when it could, if you looked at it just slightly different, could enlighten you? I love having people who are gentle in the way they ask the questions that I just asked, because they said all of this, not me. But they didn't say it in the way that I just said it, because I really want to call you guys out on this. The world is not really working the way it's working right now. We're seeing that all across the board: pandemics, people unemployed, people losing money, stock markets dropping, race relations going crazy. It's time for all of us to take a mental inventory and say, how do we contribute to that world, or how do we contribute to a new world that we can create together? Jim and Rene, thank you from the bottom of my heart again for being here with us. Mosaic people, thank you so much for joining us every week and being here with us. Did you want to say one more thing before I got off? It sounded like you did.
I just want to say thank you so much. It's been a real treat and an honor. And everybody who's listening, I really thank you for your time.
And I can't thank you enough. I truly meant what I said in my reviews on your podcast and your book. The work you're doing here can change the world. If people look deep and listen the way you ask the deep questions, I'm grateful for you not making this, what did Jim and Rene do? Why did they hit row? And what happened to Jerry? And why write the book?
Yeah.
This went so beyond that. We didn't share any of those anecdotes that people can see and read in Be More Dog. There's plenty of them, but you got to the gist of it, just nailed it on the head. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I want you to go to their websites. I want you to read their book, because that's all there for you. This is the type of stuff where people meet people. And I hope this is the beginning, Jim and Rene, and I hope that we can do more together. I hope we can figure out a way where we can play together and help each other to grow and do what we're doing. So for all of you who have given your time, I'm sorry for overgoing. You know I talk a lot, so it's my fault. But thank you for being here with us. We love you, and we'll see you next time at the Mosaic Podcast. Ciao. Thank you again. Bye-bye.